During the early 1930s, Jefferson County land values plummeted and farm debt soared. On top of the Great Depression, a combination of extended drought and voracious chinch bugs meant a poor corn crop in 1933, no crop in 34, and a half crop in 35.
I remember my father in 1934 rented an 80-acre farm, and that year in 34 we raised no crops. Chinch bugs.
Oh yeah, I remember that. They'd plow trenches around and then they'd line it with creosote.
Neighbors all come in and dug a trench by hand and filled it full of tar. The men all standing with their shovels waiting, and their wives were crying. And then as the chinch bugs came, they set that on fire.
Them bugs are supposed to come that far, and then that'd be as far as it'd go.
But it didn't do much good. Most of the farmers lost everything they had.
The bank owned the farm and they requested no rent, but they asked my father to pay the taxes, which were $8 for the 80 acres. And to scrape up $8 was something else. And I remember wearing patched overalls, patches one on top of the other. That was the norm of the day. We were poor people and didn't know it. But there was a lot of other people that were just like us.
My father and mother moved from Oskaloosa, Iowa to Packwood during the Depression. The rent at that time was $10 an acre. And Dad and Mom said they had to eat cornbread and beans and coffee to stir up $10 an acre for the farm.
My parents lived on a farm near Libertyville, and I experienced the challenges of life following the Depression. They worked hard. They had milk cows, raised hogs, and Mother had a lot of chickens. You raised almost everything that you needed.
There was no conveniences. It was all hard work. And shopping then was my mother stood at the counter while the clerk picked the groceries that she wanted and put them in a box. She had credit from chickens and eggs that we'd brought in and butter, and the credit went against the bill for the groceries.
For water, we had a water bucket. That was running water. You run out and get a bucket.
We had no electricity, oil lamps, a big old cook stove that you could put in about 50 gallons of water, and that would heat your hot water for you. Part of the house in the winter wasn't to have no heat, so you would get your long underwear on or your pajamas and run for the bed, and the covers on top was about a foot thick to keep warm.
In the house, we used mostly gasoline lamps because they made a brighter light than most kerosene lamps at the time.
I thought it was fabulous to go to visit my relatives who lived in town, had modern homes, and they thought it was fabulous to come to the country and have homemade bread and butter and things of that nature. But I didn't realize that how poor we were until I got a little older and the government started telling me how poor I was, I guess.
I was 19 when we were married, 20 when our first child was born, and after that I had 13 more children. We did not have electricity at first, which was promised when we were married. I grew up with electricity. I had never been without electricity. So it had to be loved to be married to somebody that didn't have electricity. And I learned a lot the first year. But we had running water in this kitchen, and that pretty much saved me.
The lack of modern conveniences on the farm was a big challenge throughout the first half of the 20th century. Electricity and indoor plumbing had already come to homes in town, and although they wanted to give their children the experience of life on the farm, they looked forward to the day when modern conveniences would come to their homes.
As kids, we had our chores to do every night and every morning before we went to school. We had to carry in wood for the cook stove, plus feeding the chickens, helping with getting the cows into the barn, plus milking cows too.
At that time, it was no big deal to leave a child at home to help with the farming. And with 10 boys, we could rotate one after the other, and it wasn't, but everybody did that. Everybody during farming season kept their boys home to help.
When I was about 9 years old, we used to haul water to the thrashers out in the field. One day, one guy gave me a nickel, and he never got thirsty that day. Kept him watered out pretty good.
You always was taught to give your best to whoever you worked for and to do the best job that you could do. I worked for a man that had a square baler, and I used to tie the wires on that baler, and I got a penny a bale for every one I tied, and a lot of days that we would bale from 1,000 to 1,200 bales, so I was making big bucks for somebody my age.
I'll tell you, a penny was worth money. A penny now, people won't even pick them up. And a penny back then bought a stick of candy, it bought a all-day sucker. We had neighbors that we generally made ice cream with once a week. To scratch up a dime for a chunk of ice, we'd go to the ice house and buy. Between us, they was going through all their pockets and the Davenport and everything to find a few pennies to buy a chunk of ice to make ice cream.
When I was a kid, they let us carry guns at an early age at that time. I had a .22 rifle, and the county had a bounty that they paid on groundhogs. The groundhogs was doing a lot of damage, so I'd shoot the groundhog, and then I would skin the top of its head off, its scalp, and stick it down there in my bib overalls pocket. It sounds pretty gruesome, but that's the way it was. And then when I'd go to town, I'd take that with me, and I'd get the great sum of 20 cents out of each one of those bounties, and that was kind of my spending money.
It's a beautiful name.
Even though Congress had passed the Rural Electrification Act in the 1930s, most Jefferson County farms didn't see the lights until the copper shortage of World War II had ended.
I was still a kid when we got electricity. We got it earlier than some of them did. For the first time, we could put a yard light on the windmill tower, and we could illuminate the whole barnyard.
Refrigerators, stoves, everything was electrified then. And that was a big plus.
This farm was the last farm from the town of Fairfield to be able to have electricity. At the same time, approximately, they also brought in a telephone, and the corn shucking contest was held on the farm just to the southeast of this one, half a mile to a mile away. The report for that corn shucking contest was made by Herb Plembeck, who came from that farm over to this farm and made the broadcast from WHO right there from our telephone in this house.
Iowa, what a beautiful name. When you say it like we say it back home.